Hello and welcome, and thanks for attending our session today in the late afternoon on exploring text generation foundation models for top use cases with Amazon Bedrock. My name is Flora Eggers, and with me here today on stage is Beryl Unai, and we are both solutions architects at AWS. And in this session today, we will walk you through how you can put text generation foundation models to use, how simple it is for you to incorporate these models in your applications through the Bedrock API, and also give you some best practices to keep in mind to get the most out of these models. So let's begin by having a look at the use cases of text generation foundation models. So one thing that's really great about foundation models is that they're able to process a diverse set of data. So text generation foundation models, for example, can process long-form documents, short messages, and even logs. And that gives us the unique opportunity to take advantage of a lot of the data that's already available within our organization. And that can unleash trillions of dollars of impact. And that may seem like a high number, but we do have reasons to be optimistic about that number, because we see a variety of use cases and many possibilities for raising productivity. So we see customers use generative AI to up-level their customer experiences, to improve the productivity of employees, and also to remove waste from business processes. And we've seen organizations ranging from retailers to software as a service companies build generative AI chatbots and agents using generative AI models on Amazon Bedrock to solve customer issues without requiring human intervention. And we've seen startups create tools that let individuals create content that they couldn't on their own. And we see enterprises rethink workflows that involve processing a lot of data. So let's use some examples to dive into some of these use cases here. And as a quick disclaimer in the beginning, whenever I'm using customer data here, of course, these are fictitious examples. So let's start with customer support. This is a very popular use case, and that's because foundation models are ideally suited to answer customer questions, and then even without human intervention, ask follow-up questions and go and retrieve the information that's necessary to resolve an issue. And it's also a very fast way to have a measurable impact on your business, and also to satisfy your customers. So in this example here, I am using a foundation model to hold a conversation with a customer who is having issues with a TV that they bought from a retailer. And now my chatbot here is powered by a foundation model, and the foundation model can go and look up the specific information about the TV by using just the order information, the order number here, and then it can give the guidance needed to resolve that issue. And it can do that in just a matter of 8 messages back and forth here. So that's really saving the seller and also the customer valuable time. Now, of course, you could imagine as a retailer, you don't only want to serve one customer, but you want to up-level your customer support functions across all of your customers. So in this example, I am passing the transcripts of the chatbot interactions of several customers to a foundation model, and I'm asking it to generate a table for me containing all of the products and the issues that the customers have encountered, and if we were able to find a resolution or not. And here I'm using the Meta Llama 2 13B model to create such a table. And so we see we have a table now. It contains the order information, the product information, then also information about the issue that the customers encountered and the resolution. And you could imagine having such a table with tens of thousands of products containing the feedback that our customers gave us really helps us up-level our customer service, improve that, but then also, on the other hand, refine our product catalog. So see where there are the most improvements and also feed that feedback back to the suppliers. And let's stick with transcripts for now. So these are, of course, a more and more widespread form of data. Raise your hand if you spend a lot of time collaborating in meetings. OK, I see a few of you here, and I do too. But the good news is that it's becoming easier than ever to actually create transcripts from meeting recordings. So now I have an example transcript here, and I'm using the AI21 Jurassic 2 Ultra model to create a list of action items from that transcript. And those action items also have an owner and a due date. And now you could imagine that from a developer perspective, you could build an application that not only extracts this information from my transcript, but it also goes and schedules follow-ups and to-dos in the participants' calendars, so that everybody saves time, and also we guarantee better results, since everybody is reminded automatically. Now a different example of generating a blog post. So as solutions architects at AWS, we create blog posts every now and then, really mostly around new ideas or examples of building products, building solutions using AWS services. And we even have a dedicated machine learning blog, too, which Beryl will point you to towards the end of our session today. But this blog post here will be on a different topic. So I want to create a blog post on fashion trends in the US. And while I do find that topic quite interesting, I'm really not an expert on it either. So to help me get started, I'm using the Anthropic Claude 2 model, and it creates a crisp outline for me for my blog post, and it brings up specific subtopics. And then I can go and research further into those subtopics, and it just really gives me a strong jump-off point for my blog post and saves me time in the beginning here. Another thing that foundation models are particularly good at is extracting information from complex documents. These could, for example, be legal contracts. So in this example here, I'm using the Cohere command model to extract the names of the involved parties and the due date from a contract. And you could imagine now, as a busy legal professional, you could use that information across several of your contracts to be able to prioritize them by knowing which contracts will be due sooner. And if we stick to a similar capability here, we can use that to up-level a workflow that is particularly cumbersome. So let's imagine that we have a fictitious events company. And this events company has a complex payment schedule that our customers need to adhere to. And now we might have hundreds of these contracts or agreements live at the same time. So it will be quite hard for us to track whether our customers are adhering to that agreement or not. And I can make that easier by using a text generation model. So now I'm asking the Anthropic Claude instant model to give me the information whether a customer is adhering to the contract or not. And I'm doing that simply by passing their transaction history with us. And Claude can now tell me that the customer is, in fact, not adhering to that agreement. But it can also go further and tell me what Claude's thought process was here. What is their entire analysis? So that I can quickly get the main insights and follow up on that case. sorry, one more sentence about this. So if you look at it from the developer perspective again, you could create an application that, again, extracts that information from maybe several hundreds of customers and contracts, but then also you could imagine that the application can go one step further and follow up with the customers themselves, maybe even propose a resolution, like adapting the payment schedule for them. So the sky is really the limit when it comes to the use cases for text generation models. And we're particularly excited to be able to offer a range of them on Amazon Bedrock. So there we have text generation foundation models from leading AI startups and third-party providers like AI21 Labs, Anthropic, Cohere, Meta, and Mistral AI. And we also have the Amazon Titan models. So those are for customers, especially who prefer a first-party solution. And you can also expect us to add more to the selection as time goes on. So actually, when we first launched Bedrock, we only combined the offerings of 3 providers. Then we added the other ones step by step. And now, most recently, we've added models like the Claude 3 models, the Llama 3 models, or Mistral Large as well. So considering that choice of text generation models, there are a couple of factors that you can keep in mind when you're trying to navigate that choice. And I will go into a few of them now that come up very often in our conversations. So firstly, our customers are very keen to understand what model they can use for which use case. And here, of course, the great thing about foundation models is that they can generalize across different use cases. So one foundation model can be useful for many, many different tasks. But when you get started with building your application, you should first identify what modality you need to perform in your application. So is that, for example, text generation or image generation? And then you can go and list out all of the tasks that you expect your application to perform. And if you have that list, you can go and look at evaluation studies and benchmarks that are available online. Or you can also perform your own experiments to check which models are best suited for your application, or maybe even which set of models you can use together for your application. One thing to bear in mind as well is that some model providers may prohibit certain use cases, either out of policy or safety. So you can read up on that in the policy of the provider, or the acceptable use policy, or the licensing agreement, to really understand what applications you can use that model in. Another factor to consider here is training and alignment. So foundation models are trained in stages, or created in stages. First, they are pre-trained on raw data, and that could be data that's collected from the internet. They are then refined or instruction-tuned to human input, human preferences, human instructions. And those models that are available on Bedrock via on-demand inference are of that fine-tuned type that you can use out of the box right away. However, when you see terms like pre-trained and instruction-tuned and dialogue-tuned, it's really helpful too to have a look at the model cards to better understand how these models were created, so that you can then know what to expect from their behavior when you use them in your application. Model size, that's in terms of the number of parameters of the model. That has been part of the community conversation for a couple of years now. And actually, foundation models and text generation foundation models really emerged when the model size grew to a few billion parameters. And that's when the models were able to reason on top of data and to perform tasks that they may have not been explicitly trained to do. Now, however, recently, model providers have been moving away from using the model size to describe the models, just because there are many different ways to get to the desired results other than just increasing the model size. There are still some models where the model size is mentioned. That is, for example, with the Llama 13b and 70b models. So if you're starting with a complex use case, we would recommend that you actually go for the larger model first. Use that to validate your use case, and then, as you're confident in what you're trying to achieve, try to optimize for efficiency using a smaller model and test from there. So, language support. Of course, companies are very excited to build solutions for a diverse and global customer base. And foundation models, since they're trained on data in different languages, do perform well in many different languages too. Model providers, though, may or may not officially list what languages are supported by the models. But if you do some experimentation and try things out, you will probably find that the model performs really well in different languages. So I have an example here of translating the sentence, "I am a builder," into 20 different languages. And as you can see, it works great for many different languages here. You can find the information about the language support in the model cards. And one thing to add as well is that languages, of course, include programming languages here as well. So you can use your text generation foundation models to perform code generation, fixing issues for you, debugging, etc. Another important factor when choosing a model is context size. So context size is the total number of both input tokens and output tokens that you can process in a single request to the model. And the models on Amazon Bedrock range from 4,000 to 200,000 tokens in context size. Now, large context size models are a good choice when you are processing longer documents, more complex documents, and also when you want to do prompt engineering more elaborately. So with that context size, you have a possibility to use more words for your instructions, for your rules, for your preferences and examples when you're engineering your prompt. One thing to watch out for as well when it comes to context size is that it may vary for the input and output tokens, depending on the model you're looking at. So a model may be a model of a large context size, but actually maybe the input context size is bigger than the output context size. So that's a detail to keep in mind when you're experimenting with different use cases. Next to prompt engineering, and maybe taking advantage of a longer context size to customize your output, you can also customize your output with fine-tuning. So in Amazon Bedrock, there are several models that you can fine-tune, and that includes the Amazon Titan models. And fine-tuning really means improving the model outputs by adjusting the weights based on your labeled data. And we've seen our customers achieve great results, great improvements over the base model performance by fine-tuning their models with just 1,000 examples in their training data set already. One question we get quite often is when to start with fine-tuning. And this, again, really comes down to experimentation. So you can already achieve a lot through prompt engineering. There are specific best practices for the different models that you can read up on and align with when you're doing your prompt engineering. Beryl will also give you some more examples on prompt engineering in a few minutes. And actually, the examples I used in the beginning were also all using the base models. So you can see that you already get a lot of functionality through those as well. So we would recommend to start early with that experimentation and then consider the trade-offs you have early. Going back to our choice of models in Amazon Bedrock, we have different models at different context sizes with different feature functionalities and at different price points. The prices are provided by the model providers. You can see a range of different prices here, though. What we're really trying to achieve is to enable you to find the right fit for your use case as well as for your budget. And here, there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. If you are starting with a simpler use case, for example, basic Q&A or customer support, then you can start by having a look at the models with the smaller context size that might be sufficient for that use case already. But if you're going then to more complex tasks like reasoning over contracts, over research papers or articles, that's when we would recommend you to move to the models with the larger context size and also with the higher reasoning abilities. One thing to note here, too, is that this list, of course, shows a couple of models that are available on Bedrock to give you a sense of the variety that we offer there. But this is also not a complete list. So at the moment, we offer 20 different text generation models that each have their own characteristics. And with that, I would like to hand over to Beryl to show you a demo of text generation with Amazon Bedrock.
Thanks a lot, Flora. So what we are going to do today is that we are going to look at a fun example of movie advertisement creation. So today, in general, there are so many use cases that GenAI unlocks. And in this demo, what we are going to do is we are going to work with the entire movie transcripts. So we will use those movie transcripts, try to create an advertisement summary from them, and also we will personalize it to a particular persona. And for this demo, our dataset is based on Cornell Movie Dialogues corpus. And what does it have inside the dataset is that it has these movie titles and the corresponding movie transcripts. And the movie transcript that we are going to use today is from a movie which is called 10 Things I Hate About You. So how many of you have ever watched the movie? Nice. I am seeing some hands. And before I actually start with the demo, what you're seeing in the screen at the moment is Amazon SageMaker Studio. And what you can do with Amazon SageMaker is that it's our machine learning service, which helps you to build, train, and deploy your machine learning models. And in this demo, we leverage a SageMaker Studio notebook, and we are executing our code inside of it. And with that, let's actually get started. So in the first frame, what I'm doing is that I downloaded the whole data set and converted it into a Pandas data frame, so which is a library that I'm using in order to work better with my data set. And once we visualize our data set, you can see the movie title, corresponding movie dialogue, and also what type of movie it is. And in the next cell, what we can do is that let's actually print a part of our movie transcript, which is from 10 Things I Hate About You, to see if our data set is working, printing well. And that actually worked. So for that, let's actually move to the next cell and invoke our Bedrock client. So in this cell, what we are doing is that we are importing the necessary libraries, and we are configuring our Bedrock function. So, sorry. Yep. So here, what we are doing is we are importing the necessary libraries, and on the first phase, we are configuring our Bedrock client. And inside the invoke Bedrock function, we are passing the necessary parameters, such as Bedrock runtime, prompt, and also some inference parameters, such as temperature, top K, top B values, which controls the likelihood of outputting some improbable sequences. And also, there is this max tokens to sample, which we set it to 200, which means that your model will not output more than 200 tokens. And when we are configuring the response, we are using the invoke model API through Bedrock, and we are passing our model ID. So for this demo, we are using Anthropic Claude version 2 model. So after we run the cell successfully, we can see that our Bedrock client is created, which means that now we can actually start testing our first prompt. So in this cell, what we are using is we are designing our prompt template, and for that we are using the prompt template class from LangChain. So what we are expecting from our model is that we wanted to take this movie transcript and create a movie advertisement summary from that. However, let's run the cell, and actually what we are getting now is an error. It's a validation error. And the reason that we are getting this error is that because while designing our prompt template, we actually didn't check the prompting guide. And what Anthropic Claude model requires is that we have to put these human and assistant tags inside that prompt in order for us to get the proper response. So what we can do is, in the next cell, let's actually fix this prompt. Let's put the required human and assistant tags. And also this time, let's now add our persona. So in this case, we are asking model to create this movie transcript summary, which might be attractive for some young female audience. So after we run our cell, let's see how our model is generating the output. So here we don't need to read through the whole text, but what we are seeing is that we can pick some keywords in here. So there's this hottest guy in the school, there is this struggle in romance. So we can see that the model has already created an interesting movie advertisement summary, which might be attractive for teenagers. This is good. And now let's actually change the persona. This time, let's parameterize this persona, and then change it to a young man in his 20s. And with that, let's see how the output wording in our output is actually changing. And again, so we are seeing the response from the model. And if we check some of the keywords, I'm seeing this punk rocker, these wild parties. So we can again say that the model created this response, which might be attractive for a young man in his 20s. So what we can try in the next cell is that this time, let's actually remove this X-word summary from the beginning. Instead, we directly want to see the movie advertisement summary as a result. And how we can do that is that this time we are putting these add tags. So we are actually putting the words into Claude's mouth. And what we are asking to our model is that just print everything between these add tags. And in order for our model to actually prevent emitting this close tag, this closing add tag, we are putting it inside the stop sequence. And for the persona, again, we are changing it. And this time, it's a middle-aged woman who is a fan of Heath Ledger's work. So after we run this cell, we can see that now, this time, this X-word summary is already removed from the output, and we are directly getting the response. So one important thing to note in here is that this time, we didn't actually pass the movie transcript, which is 10 things I hate about you. So whenever we pass the persona and say that it's a fan of Heath Ledger's work, the model used its own trivia knowledge and guessed that this actor actually played in the movie 10 Things I Hate About You. And then it created the response correspondingly. So for our example, it worked. But for other use cases, it is better to give more information in the prompt. And for that, you can actually reduce these hallucinations that is coming from your model. And with that, this actually concludes our demo. And now I would like to talk more about the best practices. And with that, an important question arises here. So can we use the same prompt across different large language models? So the key summary of the slide is that different models require different promptings. And the main reason is that these models are trained on different data sets. So the same prompt actually may not lead to the same response when you're using it across different large language models. And secondly, these models have different sizes and different architectures, which means that smaller models may struggle with the prompts which is designed for the larger models. So the key takeaway here is that, as Flora mentioned, one size doesn't fit all. And we really have to know which model we are working with, and we have to check the corresponding prompt guide for that. And now let's actually take a look at an example where this matters. So on the screen, you are seeing a question and answering example. And for the model, we are using Anthropic's Cloud 2 model. And on the left-hand side, in the input prompt, we asked a simple question. So we said, what is the distance to the moon? And as a response, we are getting this validation exception. So you have already seen this validation exception in the demo, so you are familiar with it, and you know the reason why we are getting this. It's because Cloud's V2 model requires human and assistant tags inside this prompt template. So after passing the correct tags, you can see that it can actually create the response correctly. So let's take a look at another example here, and in this case, we are checking Meta's Llama 2 model. So again, we are asking the question. However, in the output, we are seeing these strange results. So what requires for Meta's Llama 2 model is that in the prompting guide, we actually have to use this instruction tag at the beginning. And it's especially important if you want your model to support multi-turn conversations. And then you have to provide these system tags. So whatever you put between these system tags is actually kind of guiding your model to create your output. And then we are putting the close tag. At the end, you can see that we can get an actually interesting result for that question. And same goes for Amazon Titan Model 2. On the left-hand side, we ask the question, and as a response, we are seeing, I don't know. So the interesting thing here is that actually the model knows the answer, but since we provide the wrong prompt template, it says, I don't know. So in that case, after passing the correct user and assistant tags, it can actually give us the corresponding response. Let's also take a look at a classification task. This time, again, we are using Anthropic's Cloud 2 model. And on the left-hand side in the input, this is a basic conversation coming from our chatbot. So this chatbot is helping with some purchase orders. And what we want to do as a task is that we want to get one category as a label for this whole chatbot conversation. So we are saying that either it belongs to a feedback, either it's a support, or an information. We just want one word as a category. However, when we give this prompt to our model, in the output, you can see that it actually labels every sentence, which is not the thing that we want. So on the right-hand side, after we put the correct tags, so we are passing our question between the text tags, we are also defining the categories, and then making our model know that what are we expecting as an output. And then we can get the category support as a response. So same goes for Meta's Llama 2 model. Again, on the left-hand side, when we are using the wrong format, you can see that it actually analyzes each sentence and kind of creates a label, but it's not even one word in that case. But on the right-hand side, after we pass the correct text, we can again reach out to category support as a response. And again, same goes for Titan Model 2, kind of a concise and clean sort of answer in the support. And yeah, so what is the key takeaway in here? So the important key takeaway is that you really need to design your prompt templates. So definitely work with templates. Prompt template class from LangChain, for instance, that is integrating with Bedrock, is one easy way to start with. And for your use cases, you really have to test these different prompts. And also for your production use cases, you should pick the best performing ones. You have to monitor them rinse and repeat, and so on. So this will be the cycle that you're iterating through. So in general, sort of best practices and monitoring will be the key concept in here. And now I would like to continue with a customer example, which is coming from Booking.com. So what Booking.com does is that they are using different models through Amazon Bedrock, and they are fine-tuning it with their own Booking.com data. So at the end, they are creating some destination and recommendations, which is customized to their users. An important thing to note in here is that while using Amazon Bedrock, their data is always being kept private and secure. And with that, now let's talk a bit more about data privacy. And in Bedrock, you're always in control of your data, which means that whatever comes into these models and whatever comes out from these models, we are not storing that information. We are also not sharing your data with those third-party model providers and also not using it to train our own models. Even for the information logging, it is disabled in Amazon Bedrock by default, but you can enable it through one click through the console. And afterwards, when you would like to store those logs, you can use either Amazon CloudWatch logs or our simple storage bucket. So what about the data security? So encrypting things, encrypting your data, and also keeping the connection private. So for that, what Amazon Bedrock provides you is that it has the support for AWS Private Link, which means that you can establish this private connectivity between your virtual private cloud and Amazon Bedrock service so that your data will not traverse through the public internet. In that case, it will use the AWS network. And secondly, it has this integration with identity and access management. With this way, you can actually deny access or restrict control to your models, even for your console. And for your API activities, you can use AWS CloudTrail logs to fetch and monitor those API activities. With this way, you can see who is invoking those models, at what time, and so on. Also, for the encryption, all of your data is being encrypted at rest and at transit. However, if you are used to encrypting your data with your own customer-managed keys, then this is also supported through Amazon Bedrock. And now let's talk about another functionality within Bedrock, which is guardrails for Amazon Bedrock. So how many of you have watched the reInvent this year? Great, then you know that with this reInvent, we launched guardrails for Amazon Bedrock. And what you can do is that these guardrails for Amazon Bedrock enables you to implement safeguards for your GenAI applications based on your use cases and your responsible AI policies. So to understand it better, let's take a look at an example. So in the screen, you are seeing a screenshot taken from Amazon Bedrock console. And when we are thinking about safeguards and responsible AI policies, we often sometimes talk about the toxicity of the prompts and toxicity of the outputs coming from these models. And what we really want is that we don't want our model to offend us in any ways. So we don't want to see that toxicity results at the end. And what Guardrails for Amazon Bedrock provides is that it has these built-in content filters that you can apply, such as hate filter, insult, sexual, and violence filter. So you can take these filters and apply it either in your prompt or in your model output. So for that, let's think about an example now. Let's say that you have a chatbot which is designed for your company. And what you want from your chatbot is that you want to always take some information related with your relevant company data. For instance, you don't want your chatbot to print anything related with politics, or you don't want it to give any investment advice. So for that, let's stick with the investment advice example. So how you can configure this through Guardrails for Bedrock is that first you are defining the name of this denied topic. So it's in the form of natural language. And after we define the name, in that case we told it as investment advice, you are passing a definition for it, giving more examples about what do you mean by investment advice. And also on the right-hand side, you're giving some example phrases. So at the end, what GuardList for Bedrock does is that whenever you have a prompt, it actually does these checks for you. So let's take a look at the example on the right-hand side. And for our chatbot, we got this question: should I open a credit card account? So GuardRails actually did this check, and it didn't see it is related with one of the denied topics. So it directly said that it's passed, so you can actually use this prompt. But let's also take a look at the contrary example. So in that case, we are again seeing another question saying that, should I invest in stocks? So this is exactly related with our denied topic. And the GuardRails for Amazon Bedrock detected this topic and automatically denied it. So you can also see it on the right-hand side. And as a response to the model, it says that, sorry, I can't comment on that. So what you can do is that you can also customize this final prompt, and you can pass any other sentence that you would like. For instance, you can say that, sorry, I don't have knowledge on this topic, and vice versa. So it totally depends on you. And with that, now we are at the end of our session. And before we close, I would like to share some getting started resources with you. So on the left-hand side, when you scan the QR code, you will have access to Amazon Bedrock Getting Started course. So this is offered from our training and certification, and I totally recommend it for everyone to check that out. And on the right-hand side, if you would like to have more hands-on experiences, we have our Amazon Bedrock workshop, which is publicly available. So it has different use cases, such as text generation, classification, with different models, so that you can test them around by yourself. And lastly, we have our AWS machine learning blog, as Flora mentioned at the beginning. So by also checking that, you can see our recent blog post related with AI/ML domain. So thank you, everyone, for coming to our session today. So if you have any questions or would like to have further discussions, please feel free to reach us out through our LinkedIn accounts. So thank you.